so we're looking forward to making sure as we go into 2018 that the funding bill reflects a lot of our priorities, things like the Great Lakes Initiative, the Community Development Block Grant. There was a lot, the Appalachian Regional Commission, there was a lot of concern raised about that, and I'm very proud of the numbers that we were able to secure. It showed a prioritization that I think hopefully many of us can agree on. The other thing, always keep it in the back of your mind as we go forward, the situation in North Korea. We passed a bill involving North Korean sanctions. North Korea is something we've been watching for, if you've been coming to the town halls, at least 2 to 3 years. And we are at the point now where the nuclearization of North Korea is percolating up to being one of the most sensitive hotspots I'm keeping an eye on in the foreign situation. So, that being said, I just want to get to your questions, because your thoughts, your input are the top priority for me. So Alice, go right ahead.
All right, Deborah from the town of Carroll wants to know if you read the bill, the health care bill, and also she's concerned that it favors the young and healthy over the poor and elderly, and she just wants to know your thoughts on that and how you voted for it and why you voted for it.
Yes, so we read the bill. We've and me, I have read the bill before. We in the Committee of Ways and Means had an 18-hour, I believe it was, markup on the legislation, the base bill. There were amendments that came out through the process, and some folks may have picked up that we were supportive of the original bill, and then undecided. It was because the amendments that were coming out, the legislative text wasn't available. So I couldn't take a position until I actually read the text and come down in regards to what those amendments were all about. So that's what the undecided few days came from. But once we read the whole text, looked at its interaction of where we are with healthcare in America, I'm very comfortable in taking the position that this is a step in the process of dealing with what's collapsing under the Affordable Care Act. So we have read that bill, and I appreciate the lies, but that you are referencing here, that somehow we are speaking about. But
pre-existing condition, we have a problem.
I'm sorry?
When rape is a pre-existing
Yeah,
condition, we have
so
a problem.
Some of this, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that is just false. That is just false. That position to me is completely not based on anything in fact. It is based on, I think, more the politicking of this issue. Because as you look at the legislation, and the legislation is about 300 pages total.
Great job with that. Fantastic.
Who are you with? ABC. Okay, man. Good to see you. Yeah, we saw Terry. Okay. I guess we still have 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Like 2 minutes. We'll go right out on time. Got some cut roast.
They're afraid of you, Tom.
They're afraid of
Sounds good right here. I like
you. They
that.
don't want you swinging.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison Hunt. I am Tom's district director, for those of you that don't know me, and some of our staff up here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we did a number of written questions. I'm sure the largest topic appears to be healthcare. I'm sure we're all surprised by that. But we're going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do a quick update from DC, and we'll get started. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God.
Go through this conversation. I think at the end of the day we do a very good job of engaging in a civil conversation. So what we want to do is always have that civil conversation, always respect each other's rights to have a conversation. I appreciate the agree sign. That's very nice of you. And we do the written questions. just so we're clear, if we run out of time, because we have another town hall after this, this allows us an opportunity to get back to folks that maybe we don't address their topic, because I would assume today we're going to have a lot of updates and conversations on healthcare, obviously the topic of the day. But just two things I want to put on your radar. On top of healthcare last week in Washington, we also took care of the funding bill. So some priorities were taken care of, and so we're looking forward to making sure as we go into 2018 that the funding bill reflects a lot of our priorities. Things like the Great Lakes Initiative, the Community Development Block Grant, there was a lot, the Appalachian Regional Commission, there was a lot of concern raised about that, and I'm very proud of the numbers that we were able to secure. It showed a prioritization that I think hopefully many of us can agree on. The other thing, always keep it in the back of your mind as we go forward, the situation in North Korea. We passed a bill involving North Korean sanctions. North Korea is something we've been watching for, if you've been coming to the town halls, at least 2 to 3 years. And we're at the point now where the nuclearization of North Korea is percolating up to being one of the most sensitive hotspots I'm keeping an eye on in the foreign situation. So, that being said, I just want to get to your questions, because your thoughts, your input are the top priority for me. So Alice, go right ahead.
All right, Deborah from the town of Carroll wants to know if you read the bill, the healthcare bill, and also she's concerned that it favors the young and healthy over the poor and elderly, and she just wants to know your thoughts on that and how you voted for it and why you voted for it.
Yes, so we read the bill. We've and me, I have read the bill before. We in the Committee of Ways and Means had an 18-hour, I believe it was, markup on the legislation, the base bill. There were amendments that came out through the process, and some folks may have picked up that we were supportive of the original bill, then undecided. It was because the amendments that were coming out, the legislative text wasn't available. So I couldn't take a position until I actually read the text and come down in regards to what those amendments were all about. So that's what the undecided few days came from. But once we read the whole text, looked at its interaction of where we are with healthcare in America, I'm very comfortable in taking the position that this is a step in the process of dealing with what's collapsing under the Affordable Care Act. So we have read that bill, and I appreciate the lies, but that you are referencing here, that somehow we are speaking about. But
when rape is a pre-existing condition, we have a problem.
I'm sorry?
When rape is a pre-existing condition, we have
So
a problem.
Let's some of this, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that is just false. That is just false. That position to me is completely not based on anything in fact. It is based on, I think, more the politicking of this issue. Because as you look at the legislation is about 300 pages total. Where in the legislation can you point to that tells you, or that you rely upon, for that to be the case?
MoveOn.org.
Kaiser Foundation. Kaiser Foundation.
Washington
I don't think
Post.
we have the opportunity to see the legislation.
Legislation was out for the base of the legislation was about 50 days. There's a base CBO score that was out. The base CBO score was there, and I will accept. Hold on. I will accept the criticism, and this was something I raised during the process at the end, during the amendment process. The amendments is the score that you're referencing that is missing. And so there are those, the Upton Amendment, the Swikert Amendment, a couple of the other ones.
Which are all part of the bill.
Which are all part of the bill. But the base of the bill, the base score of what we're proposing on doing with the tax credits, with the replacement of what we could get to when it comes to Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, going forward, that didn't change through the amendment process.
How come
And
Republican
so-
senators don't like it? Republican senators do not like this bill.
And, you know, I hope the Senate gets around to taking this sooner rather than later. Having been waiting on the Senate for quite some time on many different issues, hopefully this prods them to move forward and to engage in the process as we want to go.
Yes.
And we'll go from there.
24 minutes. All right. Mark from Jamestown wanted to talk about how this bill protects people with developmental disabilities. Wants to talk about the Medicaid block grant.
So just so we're on the same page, who is it?
Mark from Jamestown.
Mark Morton? Mark Morton.
Back there.
Okay. Mark. Okay. So maybe just specifically, are there some specific concerns you want, or you want to talk in the big picture? On disability.
Medicaid, being a block grant or per capita grant.
Okay.
Individuals with disabilities really rely on Medicaid. And what that does is reduce the amount of Medicaid to the state. So that's going to severely limit services received by people with disabilities or even reduce the disability. I do work for the resource center. We're very concerned about.
And I appreciate that, because I got the, some material, and I know some folks from the Resource Center called in, I think some participants in the Resource Center, I appreciate that input. Now, when you say the reduction in the Medicaid funding, are you referencing the $880 billion worth of savings that's projected over 10 years, or what are you? What are you? Because I have never shied about getting these programs under control, because they're not sustainable on their present trajectory. And so what we're trying to do, what this bill is trying to do with the per capita cap model, and I was supportive of the per capita cap model over the static block grant model. There was some discussion to go down that path in the beginning. Per capita cap, so everyone knows what it is, and I don't know if everyone knows what it is. Mark, do you know what it is?
Read the bill.
Basically.
Yeah. Let's say it's the drop in the bucket.
So essentially what it does is it looks at the Medicaid population and it says, we are going to multiply by the populations that are in Medicaid, the cost to serve those individual folks that are getting covered by Medicaid, and we're going to multiply that together, and then that is the base amount that the state will get. As opposed to the percentage split that we generally see in Medicaid. Generally at 50% federal, 50% state. Now the issue with the percentage split that we've always had a concern, that I've always had a concern about, is that incentivizes Medicaid spending for the sake of spending. Because the more that you spend under Medicaid, the more you shift to the federal government. And actually, New York State got penalized for calculating that per capita cap. The disabled community was one of them. Older Americans was one of them, as opposed to, and what I supported and advocated for was a bump up in the calculation of an extra percent for the disability community. So hopefully that answers the issue, the question.
Individuals with disabilities having, as they grow older, more health concerns, more needs, and also doesn't take into account new people coming into the system. And that's not really addressed, I don't believe.
Okay.
Also doesn't account for people flocking to New York and California when this goes down.
Our generous welfare system?
So, thanks.
So I appreciate it. So the per capita is based on populations, and then for the next, what is it, through 2025, I believe, so I have to double check it. Then after that, you do the analysis again based on the populations. So that could be reflective of
And
what
all
we're
20
doing.
years after that.
Yeah. Then it goes from there on.
For pre-existing conditions, political, money, and courts are good records of people.
Okay.
Politico.
Pre-existing condition, because there's a lot of questions, I'm sure a lot of the questions over here. So pre-existing condition, just so we're clear, the bill protects the pre-existing condition. Tell me where in the bill, tell me where in the bill it says that. No, it doesn't.
$200 billion shortfall in your funding. That $8 billion is a drop in the bucket.
Guaranteed issue continues. What you're referring to is the community rating issue. What you're referring to is what can insurance companies charge
So
you?
there's still a mandate.
In the federal level, in the federal level, in the federal level, at the federal level, that is protected until a state
Shame on you.
applies for a waiver. When the state applies for a waiver,
Excuse me.
if and when the state can meet the requirements of the waiver, that is the flexibility to the state that we're looking at saying, you have to do it better than what the federal government has.
Does every aspect of this bill, and I'm sure not Medicaid, but does every aspect of this bill apply to members of Congress?
No.
Do you have the exact same coverage that you want your constituents to have? Please tell us the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
So the provision in the bill that got into the exemption, the waiver issue, we did not support, and that is when we came running back to the leadership and said, this is not acceptable, this is not what we're gonna support. That's why we had a bill on the House right before we voted on this, where we unanimously agreed, Democrats and Republicans, it was 430 whatever votes, where we agreed unanimously, we should not be exempt as members of Congress in any different way than the American people. And so that is good. Yes,
Columbia,
it is here.
as long as you work in the District of Columbia,
That's not
Yeah.
true.
you'll receive the full benefit.
So therefore,
They get paid good money from us.
what's that?
I said you can afford your insurance because you get paid good money from us.
Appreciate it.
Excuse me, I'm
I've had a job for 31 years.
All right, Caroline from North Harmony wanted to touch on,
Hey,
Why don't you?
lots of health care for some individuals she's concerned about. She put 24 million in her note, and also the Planned Parenthood discussion and your thoughts on funding of Planned Parenthood and
Okay.
loss of service there.
All right, so Caroline, the second question we'll ask first. I have always been clear, and this is how I conduct us in the office. When it comes to Planned Parenthood, we do not support the funding of Planned Parenthood. Now, one of the things that we advocated for, because of the Planned Parenthood services that go to women's health, what we have done in this bill, what we advocated for in this bill, is to take that funding and apply it to federally health qualified facilities that provide women's health care services.
Why does Planned Parenthood not
why don't they do prenatal care?
They do.
No, they don't. They don't.
I went to Planned Parenthood for my prenatal care.
Welcome to
reality. And you know why? Because they wouldn't cover me under my insurance because pregnancy is considered a pre-existing condition.
So we'll go back to the pre-existing conditions, that is going to continue going.
You better add Viagra to that.
So, that was good. As to the 24 million folks who lose insurance, obviously, that is a number that is concerning to me. The issue, how you vote on a bill that has a score like this, you look at what has happened and where we are going. And so like when the CBO,
Facts matter.
when the CBO came out with its original score of the Affordable Care Act and its final score of the Affordable Care Act, just to put it in perspective, it scored that 24 million folks would, or 22 million folks in America would have health insurance. That number came in at 10.1 million. So the bean counters often miss these things. So then the other issue, so the 24 million.
If they had, the numbers would have been closer.
The 24 million is obviously something we're working to get as low as possible. And the way I believe, the better way, the better philosophy is not government mandate, which a lot of the scorekeepers rely upon is to bring in pressure in the marketplace that will drive these costs down, both in health insurance and health care. This bill deals primarily with health insurance. We do need to have a conversation. We do need to have a conversation about health care and how we can more efficiently and effectively deliver health care in America. My hope is we can get to that. Single payer, just so you know where I stand on single payer care.
In 2009, when the Obamacare was working its way through the House, your wonderful leader, Paul Ryan, went before the entire country and said, this bill was being jammed through by the Democrats without a score. So now you guys, on this second round, didn't wait to get a new score to see how they would react to the changes you made. So here, Paul Ryan said that in 2009, because it was the Democrats trying to push it through, so you guys didn't want to wait for a second score to have them look at what you were doing now.
And the Obamacare score was way off.
I don't fundamentally, just so we're all clear, knowing how the scorekeepers operate, the score is not going to change drastically from where it is on that base score. Because of the amendment, the nature of the amendment language, because the amendment language deals with all waivers. The base score, the base text is very important to have that score. And I hear the criticism, and I was a voice that said, you know, let's get the full score, and I did raise that issue, but the decision was made to go forward with it. Knowing what the base score is, knowing what the legislative text is, having read the legislative text, having made the best informed decision that we could, we came down where we did because I believe, that this is a step in the right direction because the present status quo is not sustainable. Maryland, I mean, just as I'm driving over here, just as we were coming over here yesterday, just so everyone's on the same page, Maryland, 58% premium increase, or 59% premium increase.
Cut the subsidies.
New York, just so you're aware, you are going to be receiving a notice in the mail, because I've talked to the carriers, of about a 40% premium request increase that they want to secure. I don't know people.
You're going up 5 times for everyone from 50 to 64. 5 times my premium subsidy.
There's a bill lie.
So
That's what's in their bill. Read it.
And everybody
Why do they believe anything that mainstream media says?
You can't believe anything Fox says.
Nothing but lies. No truth to it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right.
You said your goal,
They wanted the free.
anybody's goal would be to lower the cost up with the insurance companies. Okay. How do you do that? How do you tell an insurance company that they don't need to make $40 million this year, they can live on $20 million?
Okay, great question. And how do you do that? So one of the things, 30 days ago, right when we were also debating the health care bill and it got pulled, right around that same time, for example, there was a bill on the floor of the House that I support. It removes the antitrust exemption that the insurance carriers hide behind right now, and they potentially could collude and not have that transparency of a marketplace on them. We supported removing that antitrust exemption for those carriers. We want more sunshine into these processes. We want, when it comes to non-for-profit disclosures, 990 reform, you may have heard me talking about this in regards to college costs and other non-for-profits. 990 forms right now for our non-for-profit healthcare carriers, our Blue Cross Blue Shields. Reading those, understanding the information is extremely difficult because they hide information. We want to have all of that information out there so that when those carriers come walking in for their premium increases, when they come walking into communities, we go, we know where the money's going, why is it going here, why are our costs continuing to go up?
Why did you take so much for your campaign to the insurance company?
So, I don't know what these numbers are. I don't know what these numbers are that you're referencing. So we have to do the same. And that's what sunshine is all about. I I appreciate that. We want more of that when it comes to campaign disclosure. On health care, the same type of reforms is what we need to apply in health care, in my opinion. Because you got two tools, in my opinion, that you're gonna have single payer, government control, government, or you're gonna bring the power of people, you're gonna bring power of people into it.
There is no profit in single payer. We have to get the profit.
Yes.
And that is why you're here.
Called the VA.
Talking about tax exemption and property tax relief. These are human beings. We have bodies, we have minds. We are not property taxes.
We also have votes.
That's how you boil that down. We are not money. We are a nation.
And I appreciate
I went to Germany.
President Trump praised Australia's universal health care.
I appreciate your belief that you believe government can take care of this for all of us
The
in America.
government
I
doesn't
don't
take
believe
care
it
of me.
will.
They just do the bookkeeping. The VA The insurers do bookkeeping for a profit on your back, on your back, on your back. Right. The VA does bookkeeping on mine,
And why are they-
my behalf. I'm a
So you
veteran.
go to the VA
Everyone
Center?
here deserves single payer health care now.
I disagree with
Is Paul from Ellery in the room? Paul, I wanted you to be able to ask your own question because you wrote that down. So.
I'd like to make a statement.
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, I'm a self-employed businessman, and like you, I have investment properties. I'm keenly aware of rising costs of health insurance, as well as property taxes. A little over 11 days ago, I checked into Strong Memorial Hospital and donated a kidney. I helped save so many lives. There was a lot of thought went into this. With the help of the staff at Strong Memorial, it was determined that I have less than 0.5% of a chance of having end-stage renal failure. So I was a good candidate. They also told me that by donating a kidney, that I would be considered to be classified as having pre-existing condition. Thank you. Went ahead and had the procedure, and I'm glad I did it. With the passing of this legislation on Thursday, things have changed significantly. Of course, for me, my concern is that now that I have a pre-existing condition, that my cost of health care could go up significantly. And also, I could possibly be denied health care. Now, I know that in the provision, there is money set aside to help in this event. But my understanding is that that's $11 billion or $8 billion over 5 years, which is about $1.5 billion per year. You spread that out over 310 million people in this country. It's not a whole heck of a lot. It's kind of like a doctor that did the procedure, putting a bandage on my belly and sending me home.
Okay, let's go back to it.
Sure, sure.
So if we could, let's just make sure we're dealing with the actual facts and not misinformation. One, pre-existing condition, guaranteed issue, is not addressed in any way in this legislation. That reform goes forward. The community rating, if a state so chose to go down that path and ask for a waiver, which gets into the pricing issue, then a state could theoretically have that path available to it under what we supported on Thursday. The issue that you talk about, the $8 billion, which is dealing with the continuous coverage, situation. What that is designed for is if you lose your health insurance because you want to game the system, you want to say, you know what, because you have guaranteed issues, that reform's not going away. What we're concerned about, just like the individual mandate, that was the individual mandate's concern, is that people would wait because they were going to be in a position to get insurance, regardless of what they had before and things of that nature, that there would be a penalty if they did lose their insurance for 63 days. That penalty is 30% of the premium for 12 months. So then the issue came up, and Fred Upton and I talked about this, and Upton is the former chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee. His recommendation, or his proposal, was that for those individuals that fall into that category, where they, for whatever reason, that 63-day window, there was no access to Medicaid, there was no access to employer-sponsored health care, there was something that prevented them from getting insurance during that 63-day period, there would be a separate fund of money to the tune of $8 billion that would be utilized to those individuals to help them cover that penalty. So there's no pre-existing condition, you're never going to have an insurance policy going forward. You will. You will. And then if a state, now we live in New York, do I see New York applying for a waiver, giving what New York's regulations and what New York has put on the books in its historical reference when it comes to health care? So the point there is I'm not real concerned that New York would go down that path. Now the whole concept of the waiver is, I'm a states' rights guy. I'm a local government guy. I believe that the local and state governments generally is where the power should rest from the people, originally in the people, but then with the state or the local government. And if they can come up with a new way, an innovative way that we're not even thinking about right now, why would we not want to provide them an opportunity to at least make the argument that they can do it better than the federal government? Is why we came down where we did.
Time lapse.
A couple things that I'd like to address. First of all, if there was an innovative way, why didn't it happen before 2009? That doesn't make sense to me. But secondly, getting back to my situation as a donor, again, I was told that I'm going to be classified as having a pre-existing condition. This is going to have a significant impact on people going forward who are considering donating an organ. There doesn't seem to be any guarantee that my rates aren't going to go up, or that perhaps I could be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition. And of course, it goes beyond just me and my kidney. There's a laundry list of other conditions. Call me whatever you want, but I think...
I call you a hero and you're being punished for it.
I think that health care should be something available to everybody. It shouldn't be a privilege for a few people that can afford it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you for that generosity that you demonstrated. And as a father of a child that has type 1 diabetes, another pre-existing condition, I am looking at this exactly the same way you are. You know, when you talk about pre-existing conditions, these are real people. This is my own son. This is my own flesh and blood. And so I am not going to go down something where that reform is lost. So from my perspective, this is moving the ball forward to deal with the healthcare crisis in America. And so if you want to advocate for the status quo, I don't know how we do that.
We wanted you to make it better.
To go back to 2009, I'm not advocating for that either. So we want to do it better. But as is demonstrated here today, this room, a lot of folks want single payer. I don't subscribe to that. If there's a better way to do this, if there's a better way to get into insurance reform that bring the cost down, bringing healthcare down, I am all in on it. And so that's where we talk about phases. When we talk about phases and how we are going about this process, the third phase has always been where can we come together as Democrats and Republicans to support health care reform? And that's what we're definitely working for.
I want to give a credit to
Okay.
the administration for 40 years.
Okay?
The administrative costs for Medicare are 2%. The administrative cost for private health insurance is 15% or higher. There's an immediate cost saving if you simply would apply Medicare for all. Medicare has proven to work. I'm under the program. I know people who are under the program. It works. It pays less than private health insurance for actual medical care.
So if this is
There's
the
another
case-
cost saving.
Go ahead, please.
If you expand the pool, you'll include all people, young and old.
Yes.
You will also drive the cost of premiums down because you've expanded the pool. The government also has the ability to negotiate costs for services and especially drugs.
Drugs, yes.
Private
Nobody's done more to bear down front than
program like
Medicare.
Medicare for All, which would be a single payer program, would immediately drive costs down if it were implemented. Would immediately do that. If you're about cost saving, let's talk about cost saving. Let's talk about good care. Let's talk about
And yeah, I know all of a sudden everyone's going to jump up and lie, but the reports can
Doing that.
say that we're lying. Does everyone jump up and say that we're lying, that I'm lying? Just so we're- And how do all the actuarials that look at Medicare say it's not sustainable?
Same with the VA.
That it's upside down? That it financially cannot survive over the next 10 to 15 years? So how can you hold up Medicare that is collapsing under this present model and say that's what we should do with everyone's health care? So you've been in the business 40 years. Why is Medicare, I'm asking the question, you've been in the business 40 years. Why is Medicare in this situation and you want to expand it to everybody in America and run the risk of a collapse?
examples are that Congress has reduced funding, taken funding out of Medicare to apply to other programs. The cost of supporting Medicare or Social Security would be far less with the subsidies than it would be to continue with private health care. Those costs are already way above. You can reduce that. Even if you spent more money on Medicare, it will be far less than what it's costing for private health insurance. You reduce the administrative
So
costs.
you recognize that what you would be advocating for, that generally most folks, when you look at the numbers per Medicare beneficiary, contribute somewhere around $100,000 to $150,000 for their Medicare portion of their payroll taxes, but yet they draw about $350,000 to $400,000 out of the system. How is that? So you would advocate for those folks? You would advocate for those folks that are paying $150,000 to pay $300,000?
I don't know where your numbers are coming from.
From the actuarial report.
Besides that,
That's not how insurance works.
right. The whole point of insurance is you want insurance to figure out ways to drive the cost down.
So you're not advocating for Medicare then?
Oh, yes,
For all?
Socialism.
So you want to go to a Medicare insurance model?
Don't be out
Okay.
single payer, the only single payer program we have in this country right now is Medicare. Medicare works. It's all about payroll taxes, it's all about contributions. Same thing with private health insurance. It's about everybody making contributions. The same thing, it's the same thing, but it's a much larger pool. It'll automatically drive the costs down. You won't have to raise the taxes.
Why did young people enroll in Obamacare?
I did.
So
Maybe you did.
I did.
90% did.
I would offer, here's the debates we've had on this, and this is a good dialogue. This is very constructive. I would offer the price control mechanism for healthcare and Medicare are very difficult right now because we're generally a fee-for-service system. Now, this is some reform that I think is also going to go forward, where you get into how you reimburse in health insurance in regards to a per capita basis as opposed to a fee-for-service based system. A lot of the Medicare type of reform is going down that path and Medicaid. So I think there's maybe some agreement there in regards to
Fee for
that.
service, you can do fee for outcome.
Yeah.
That's a whole separate issue. I'm talking about just in terms of driving the cost down for people that have health insurance. If you went into Medicare for all, it would be an immediate drop. Look at that.
Nancy from Buckeye wants to talk about, her number is 76,000 people are going to lose insurance in our district and because of the vote on healthcare. So I don't know if she wants to elaborate on where she got that number from. Nancy?
Nancy?
Nancy in the room?
Nancy still in the room? 70?
New York 23. It's a blog for people in our district.
Okay. So relying on that blog, now I've seen numbers where they've projected out things all over the different spectrums, but I've seen numbers like this before. What they're generally referring to is the Medicaid expansion population that potentially could be at risk. The 100 to 138% of the working poverty that New York elected to expand Medicaid. We are phasing this in on the Medicaid expansion. This was something that was very important to us so that we have time to adjust for the new Medicaid program after 2020. And so as we go through this process, a lot of these folks that are referenced here as losing their insurance are already going to come out of that pool because generally Medicaid populations, especially the working folks, the folks that are in that category, they tend to earn more money or they will age up into Medicare. And so what will generally happen is they won't lose their insurance, they'll lose their Medicaid potential coverage because they're doing better financially, they don't qualify for Medicaid anymore, or they age up into Medicare. So some of these numbers we question. I'm sorry?
Conflating these two things together because our aging population that goes into long-term care, into nursing homes, if you're in a hospital, if you're in some sort of...
Those are the dual eligibles.
Okay, but that's most of our population. Medicaid takes care of populations within the nursing homes. Medicaid is not just something that people's laying on a couch saying, pay me my handout. Medicaid is taking care of our aging population. Please just think that.
No, they're dual eligibles. They're definitely a part of this equation, but the population that's referenced in this number are the folks typically in that Medicaid expansion population of the 100 to 138% working poor. So either they will get a raise and they will make more money, and therefore they don't.
They don't want to work. They want it free.
So then they will come out of the Medicaid expansion. Typically, the longer you work, just so we're on the same page, the longer you work, the higher wage you get. So the folks in this room believe the longer you work, you generally lose a wage, your hourly. So no.
Wait, we're in New York. You're never tax us to that.
Maybe I wasn't clear. So the question for the Medicaid expansion population was, where's this number coming from? And the number is people are working, getting hired.
Number of patients from in the factories around here, and they were making $25 an hour, and some company buys it from overseas. They have to reapply.
Why don't you ask where all the industry went? How about NAFTA?
That's right, NAFTA.
Okay? That's why the job liberal policy is what it is.
Last 30 years, people no longer have pensions or their they don't have their health care, so they have to pay for their health care on less salary. And then they have to, then they get
They get blasted for not saving enough money for retirement, but they haven't gotten a raise, they've gotten a D-raise.
The cost of Obamacare.
Your solution.
2008.
Where do they?
I still work. I make more money today than I ever made.
I understand, but that's not what we were discussing. What we were so Medicaid
You sum up line is the more money you make. And that is a perfect example that that is not always the case. And even if it is the case, the proportions are very different. You have healthcare that is skyrocketing because it is for profit, and we have greedy people, and we have politicians that are looking for more campaign donations and are allowing it to happen to a Western New York aging population that are your constituents.
As we were trying to explain the Medicaid expansion population, where this number is coming from, maybe we'll have to continue that conversation because that's generally where we're finding this. But that's why the phase-in was so important to me, to the 2020 date. Then also, on the per capita, remember going back to the per capita formulas, we wanted older Americans and the folks in the disabled community to get that bump up in that reimbursement formula for the exact reason that a lot of folks here are concerned about.
Congressman,
Yes,
one
one
question,
question.
not about health care.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Folks, my name is Jeff Baker. I somehow stumbled, I don't need it, sir. I somehow stumbled from Chautauqua High School to the University of Michigan Law School to Jones Day. I'm a former Jones Day litigation partner, which doesn't mean much, but that's Trump's current firm. What this man is doing is incredibly difficult. He is fielding questions. I've counted. There are 180 people in the room. One of them has a pro-you sign. 179 to 1 is nasty odds. Doing it once in a day. That's here. Here.
No, you're important.
I'm an informal chick.
Can I ask my question? Here's my question, sir.
Who's from Bustide?
I am deeply concerned, based on the recent things I've seen our president do in recent interviews, that he is starting to lose it. This is the most horrible thing that can happen to anyone or their friend.
You're out of your mind!
What group are you with? My specific question, please, Congressman. Exactly how would you see the 25th Amendment fitness questions if it comes to that? This has already been the most bizarre presidential whatever it is. It's going to go down. It's going to go down by treason under the Constitution. It's going to go down by the FBI investigation into Russia. It doesn't have a chance to make it into 2017, 2018. My specific question, do you have any concerns that this is not a minor issue? This guy is just getting increasingly bizarre every week.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the question. I'm going to disagree with the gentleman. And what I offer you is that what this president is doing is he is being completely unorthodox. He is bringing disruption to Washington, D.C. like I've never seen before. And I applaud it because that town does need to be shaken up from its core. And I'm proud to be part of the effort that he's trying to do it.
Excuse me. Congressman. Hey, a deep breath. We all need a little oxygen. Very simply, I don't disagree with anything you said, but it has nothing to do with my question. This man's mind is going. We all have your full.
We understand your opinion. We understand your opinion. with your assessment. And we'll deal with that as it comes up. Absolutely, I will always deal with every issue objectively.
He's a traitor!
Oh, that's my job.
You a social?
Okay, good.
All right, we're gonna change topics. I have the Dawson family.
Step outside, we can.
Whoa. No, we don't do that in America. We don't do that here. We don't do it here, and I'm going to make sure that we don't have that. We have a dialogue that is civil. That is civil. And that is what elections, and that is what makes America great.
So we have the Dawson family. I'm not sure who's here from the Dawson family, but they wanted to ask a question about your feelings about Trump and his funding of the EPA, what he thinks the funding of the EPA should be, and where you're at.
All right, well, as we said, there were some other issues in DC last week, and we dealt with the funding bill for the rest of this year. And we have always been supportive of an EPA at the federal level that is engaged in reasonable oversight addressing environmental concerns. I believe that the funding levels that we have here are sufficient for them to fulfill that mission as we go forward. But I've always come at this from a reasonable cost-benefit analysis when we look at the regulations coming out of the EPA and other agencies. And that is what we're going to continue to do, hopefully, as we go forward. And so as we deal with the funding bill, there was a lot of concern raised, and I thank all the input that came in, because people were raising concerns about the Great Lakes Initiative, the Community Development Block Grant, Appalachian Regional Commission. We advocated West Valley, something I watched very closely. All those funding levels stayed the same or went up slightly in this budget. So I think our priorities were well reflected.
Slightly not enough this day.
We're slightly...
We need aggressive funding.
Okay, I understand, but we have a debt issue that we also have to be sensitive to. So at the same time, this budget, I think, reflects those priorities going forward. The other thing that we don't want to lose sight of is that also in this healthcare bill, and this is something I'm really sensitive to because you touch on it when you talk about more funding, more taxes. This healthcare bill has a provision in it that's going to remove the burden on our county governments to the tune of about 70% of their tax levy immediately being passed to where it belongs, up in the state capitol, so that those guys have to be held accountable to the unfunded mandate that they keep passing the buck on to us, the county property tax. So keep an eye on that. Okay, so the question by the nice lady here in the front row is about all the organizations that are opposed to this act, and how do we explain their opposition essentially to this and then our support for it. So, a lot of these folks, these are all a lot of interest here, reflect the providers, that reflect the folks that right now are getting a tremendous amount of resources under the status quo. And because of the concern that this disruption, and I get it, that's where I think there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. There's a lot of folks that are coming to the office, like the hospitals and others, that are saying, we don't know what you're going to do under this bill, but we do know what we get under the status quo, and therefore we don't want to have a conversation about changing the status quo. So a lot of the providers have come down, in my opinion, on that side. Now the bottom line, as we talk to them, for example, the hospitals, we have been trying to stand with the hospitals and continue to stand with the hospitals because they are facing a cut under the Affordable Care Act, under the disproportionate share hospital payments, to the tunes of billions of dollars. Now what I was told, just so you're aware of it, I was told, well, Tom, those will never happen. Those cuts and reimbursements will never happen because they promised us, back when the Affordable Care Act was passed, that those cuts were so bad that they wouldn't go forward, and that we had an assurance, wink, wink, that that would be taken care of. As I told them, I don't see that situation in the present environment. These cuts are real, they're significant, and because they hit our lower income, our rural hospitals in particular, you better get prepared for either dealing with the cuts or shutting down your access to care. And from my that's why we repealed the cuts in this bill, and that was another reason why we supported it.
Shouldn't we keep track of the people who are actually invested in this idea? We send doctors to school for years to become experts in their fields. And then when we come up with healthcare, we are purposefully excluding them from the idea because they are just greedy and they just want the money and they're going to be taking from our funding, right? But I keep hearing all this urgency that we need to hurry up and change this because the Affordable Care Act is crumbling. And I don't have any actual facts to support that. Can you please provide me specific facts that number 1, the Affordable Care Act is in fact crumbling, and number 2, that we cannot make improvements to it without kicking all of these people out, without giving tax cuts, more tax cuts to the rich. That is the basis of our healthcare system at this point in time.
Were you listening to that?
I'm waiting.
Have you been around for the last 30 years, dude?
So if you look at the New York Republic Co-op, the co-ops that were set up in New York, those did not work. You had hundreds of thousands.
Without that did not work, can you please?
They collapsed. They collapsed.
No,
They
it's not
collapsed.
specific. I'm looking.
New York Republic collapsed and hundreds of thousands of people lost their insurance because they could not stay in business. They went out. They couldn't cover the payments for the people that were relying on them to go see their doctors and their providers. That was gone. Iowa, right now, 94 counties. The carrier is down to 1 carrier in Iowa. There's 99 counties and 94 of them are pulling, the 94 of those counties will have no choice whatsoever to get health insurance.
Why did John Kasich expand Medicare for Ohio?
Those are states that are choosing.
And when we hear about the co-pays and the deductibles and the insurance increases that people are already experiencing, plus the premium increases that are coming down the pipeline here very shortly to each of us. So there we go. Let's fix it. So what we have done here, we still have to get to the health care question. So how would we fix it? You want to fix it with a single payer system. So we're not going to agree on that. So where's the compromise? Where's the compromise? So there's no compromise. There's no compromise whatsoever is what you're saying. No compromise whatsoever. And so my perspective, this is not a sustainable way to go.
It's against the people who are sick. As humanity, we should not be taking advantage of those who are in a situation that they need help. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking advantage of those who are sick. That is exactly why the insurance pools work. You don't only insure those who are sick. Look at the history of why insurance was first started. It was because you could not give pay raises during the Great Depression. And so they gave benefits instead. And so now what you're doing is, and the reason why that worked was because you had all people that were contributing to it. Not only the sick. And now that's exactly what you're doing. You are victimizing even more those who are ill. Those who have pre-existing.
Richard from Jamestown wanted to get your thoughts on an independent investigation into the Russian situation.